Hello, everyone. My name is Diana. I am 17 years old, and my parents kicked me out of the house recently because of my unusual relationship. I have to warn you, this story is not for people with high moral grounds. I was getting ready for college, hanging out with friends sometimes, and the rest of my time was dedicated to Instagram. That's where I ran into the sweetest guy in the world, named Zach. The name suited him very well because he looked like a young version of Zac Efron in his pics. Google him if you aren't familiar. I liked him immediately, but I had too much pride to text him first. Instead, I liked his photo and immediately unliked it and then did it over and over again. You know, women's tricks. And just like I expected, a few minutes later, he texted me. As a result, for the whole next week, we chatted every day and every night. And after that, we started going on dates. Even though he appeared to be a super cool guy, he also had a very caring and kind side in real life. The perfect guy, you know? Everything was going really well, but after a month of dating, Zach took me to his house, where I met his twin brother named Luke. Since they were twins, he was just as hot as Zach. Yes, they also had similar personality traits. The only difference between them was that Luke completely ignored me. I mean, he'd say hello and goodbye, but otherwise he was completely indifferent. And Luke, the one who barely responded to me, began to capture my attention even more than Zach. The more he ignored me, the more I wanted to get his attention. I obviously tried to fight my attraction to him, but I was failing at it. Of course, you can judge me, but as time went on, I shamelessly fell in love with my boyfriend's brother. There was one time at their house when Zach was helping his dad in the garage, and I said I had to use the restroom, but I went into Luke's room instead, and guess what I did? Just silently kissed him. This was part of my plan. By kissing him, I wanted to know if Luke had any sort of feelings for me. To play it safe, after the kiss, I pretended to be embarrassed, saying I thought that it was Zach. So even if Luke told Zach, I couldn't be blamed. But Luke didn't say anything. In fact, later that night, after I got home, Luke sent me a message. I was over the moon because my plan had worked. In his message, Luke admitted that he had liked me since the very start, and he just ignored me because I was his brother's girlfriend. But after the kiss, he couldn't hold himself back anymore. I bet he couldn't. Everything was happening exactly the way I wanted it to. I admitted that I liked him too, so we agreed that eventually I would break up with Zach and we would meet secretly before I did that. In a matter of weeks, my life got extremely crazy. During the day, I was seeing one handsome man, and at night, I was secretly seeing another. Of course, I completely forgotten about college. I told Luke I'd break up with Zach, but man, I loved getting attention from both of them. Each of them was cool in their own way. Again, you can judge me, but come on. Two lovely Zac Efrons are better than one. Luke would ask me when I was going to leave Zach every single day. He didn't want to hide our relationship anymore, but I kept putting it off. To be honest, I would have delayed it even further. But all my secrets got revealed at one point. One night, I invited Luke to my house. My parents knew I was dating Zach, and they also knew he had a twin brother. But when Luke arrived, they didn't see the difference. And it would have been fine if Zach hadn't decided to surprise me that night. It turns out it was our special day. 2 months since we had first kissed. Who even remembers that? Long story short, he brought me flowers, and my parents probably didn't understand anything, but still let him in. Anyway, Zach caught Luke and I kissing. My dad barely managed to keep them from fighting and get them out of the house. I was very worried that they could hurt each other, but I had to stay because my parents thought I owed them an explanation. Obviously, after they found out the truth, they were not happy with me. But when I started all of this, I knew the consequences it could lead to. Luke texted me saying that he and Zach had a big fight and that Zach didn't want to talk to him anymore. Luke blamed me for that, like I should have broken up with Zach a long time ago. He was right, of course, but what was done was done. I texted Zach in order to apologize to him, but unfortunately, he ignored me as well. So as not to complicate anything, they didn't say anything to their parents as I understood it. In general, after a couple of days of being a little shocked, Luke and I still continued to meet. Just to remind you, I warned you that this story is not necessarily for people of high moral standards. Now, it was much easier to meet because we didn't have to do it secretly anymore. Obviously, we didn't go to their house, but we also tried to keep out of Zach's sight. We still met openly, but in the end, us being open just made things worse. You know, with Zach gone, Luke and I lost that spark that was added by having to do everything in secret. At some point, I got bored. We began to hang out less often, and arguments were a frequent thing. Once, when I was tired of the constant fighting, I asked Luke if we could take a break in our relationship, but he reacted very violently. He said that he would not let that happen because I made him fight with his own brother. And when I told him that I didn't want to see him anymore, he tried to lay his hands on me. He didn't hit me, but I was still very scared. Of course, he immediately started to apologize, but it was too late. Before that, I still had doubts about breaking up with him. But after he did this, I was sure that it was not worth saving. I told him all of this. So he walked me home and apologized. But unlike in the beginning of the story, when he ignored me, it was the other way around. He was texting me, begging me to start over, but I was already texting Zach. I told him I'd reevaluated everything and realized that I loved him and that I'd broken up with Luke for him, but he ignored me. It was very challenging, me not answering Luke and Zach not answering me for quite some time. But one night, Zach felt sorry for me and called. It wasn't exactly the way I wanted it to be. On the phone, he said I was a total scam artist and that I didn't deserve to be treated well. But he still loved me. Man, I really didn't deserve that. So I spent half of the night apologizing to him. We talked on the phone for about 5 hours. But in the end, thankfully, we decided to get back together. Everyone should have a second chance. And thank God I got it. I was over the moon again. Zach and I were finally having a great time together. Luke texted me for a while, but then suddenly stopped. I thought he was just backing down, but it was more complicated than that. Once, when I was hanging out with Zach, I suddenly realized that it was not quite Zach hanging out with me. Obviously, the looks and the voice were very similar, but I still had a feeling that something is off. To test my paranoia, I said, "Hey, Luke," and he replied. I was shocked. It turned out that not only did Luke fool me and pretend to be Zach, but it also turned out that Zach was in cahoots with him. Luke asked me to listen, but I was so angry. I just turned around and walked away. I wrote an angry letter to Zach saying that if he wanted to punish me, he could have simply not agreed to get back together. I didn't understand the need for this circus. Again, he didn't reply to my messages all day, but called me at night. Apparently, that's sort of his thing. He said he was really happy when I decided to get back together with him, but he also felt very sorry for Luke. Zach had already been through our breakup, and he knew how bitter it felt. So, they decided, to put it bluntly, to share me. Of course, I got extremely offended. I'm not a thing to be shared. But then it dawned on me that maybe this is what I've been wanting all along. 2 lovely Zac Efrons at the same time. But this time, everyone gives their full consent to this relationship. Well, it sounds a little crazy, even for the 21st century. But we agreed that I'm just polyamorous, and they both love me. It was definitely a perfect relationship, but it can't be 100% good. Just like I said in the beginning, my parents found out about my unusual lifestyle, but this time they could not accept it. They gave me a choice: family and a roof above my head, or Zach and Luke. Well, you know what I chose. We tried to move things to the guy's place, but my parents told their parents everything. They were unable to cope with our progressive type of relationship as well. So they told Zach and Luke the same thing. Oh, how original. But we didn't panic. All of us had some savings, so we rented a one-bedroom apartment and settled in there. At first, it was difficult to find a job, but the country needs waiters. I didn't manage to go back to college yet. As you understand, there was no time for it with the recent events. And also, my parents didn't give me any money for college. But at least I could be together with my dear Zach and Luke. What else do I need?